Hey guys, Yummy here again, and today I wanted to talk about game modes in video games, specifically multiplayer game modes, which, well, I mean, honestly, that's the only kind of game modes there are, and just how many is too many, because recently there's starting to become a problem in many multiplayer shooters with just having so many game modes that most of them end up just being neglected, or they cause a problem with splitting up the player base of that multiplayer game. And I think Battlefield 4 specifically was something that was kind of involved in that. As you guys may know about bloating, which is having too many guns. Like Battlefield 4 was starting to approach that. I mean, honestly, I didn't have a big problem with having so many guns, because it's just like a lot of them perform really similarly, so it comes down to just personal preference, which one you'd like to use, which one you favor more because of like real life or whatever. But in terms of game modes, it's actually a problem to have too many, as it's been seen in Battlefield Hardline and even recent Call of Duty titles. They just have so many game modes that most of them just don't end up being played. This was basically spurred on by Matemio's recent video on Diffuse. Whenever I was watching that, I was like, oh yeah, that is a game mode that exists. I've never actually been able to play it. It seems interesting. It's kind of like, man, I can't even think of the name right now, but it's basically like Rush, but it's like a mixture between Rush and Obliteration, where there's a team that's attacking with a bomb, and there's two MCOM locations, and it's a round-by-round game mode. So I think they were trying to make it for competitive for like a pro scene or whatever. And the attackers just have to blow up, I think it's just one bomb. I think they just have to blow up one of the MCOMs and they win. And the defenders win by either time running out or killing all of the opponents. Or I think defusing the bomb as well wins the match for them. It was pretty interesting. Like, it definitely could be a staple of the Battlefield franchise, but I think people just aren't really a fan of being super infantry centric in Battlefield. You see, the most popular game modes are Conquest and Rush, which both involve vehicles, so it just wasn't really in the cards. And on top of that, there were other unpopular game modes like Squad Rush, Squad Obliteration, which I actually thought was pretty cool, but that didn't work out as well, and Gunmaster and Capture the Flag as well. All of these game modes just don't even get played. Not to mention all the game modes in Battlefield Hardline, like the competitive intended game modes, that just don't work out. So all they serve to do is really split up the player base, which makes player numbers on other game modes smaller, or all game modes in general smaller. But that's not really what happened with Hardline, though. I mean, honestly, instead of splitting up evenly, the player base pretty much just sticks to the main game modes like Conquest and Blood Money and Hotwire, and all the other game modes are just completely barren. And that's the problem with having too many modes. It just becomes useless. And I mean, honestly, you should stick to maybe 3 or 4 modes, and if you want to try out a new mode, there's nothing saying that you have to keep an old mode. And I mean, if you're making a brand new game that has all of these new mechanics and stuff, there's no problem with getting rid of one of the older modes and testing out a new one and seeing what happens. And maybe if the response to the new game mode is really terrible, you can add the old game mode back in a DLC or something. Honestly, just avoiding having too many modes is probably going to be a lot better for your player base overall. And Hardline doesn't even have anywhere as near as many game modes as Call of Duty. The last few Call of Duties, I mean, I never even played Ghost. I don't think I ever really saw like the menu for it or anything. I saw nothing with that game. And I didn't see much of Black Ops 2 either, but of AW and Black Ops 3, just looking at whenever you're going into matchmaking, holy crap, there's so many modes for the standard playlist, and then there's the hardcore playlist, which, as fast as the time to kill is in COD already, I wouldn't touch hardcore with a 50-foot pole. But all of the game modes that are in the normal playlist are also in hardcore version, and then there's extra ones on top of that. There's so many game modes that I would never get to play all of them if I wanted to. It's insane. I pretty much just stick to TDM, and that's whenever I go home and I don't bring my PC home, so I just play on my Xbox One, which has Black Ops 3, and that's the only time that I play Call of Duty. But I mean, honestly, like most of the players go to TDM or hardcore TDM or something like Kill Confirmed. Some of the older game modes, like they're established game modes, and then there's other ones that are just really superfluous. Now, I enjoyed third person team tactical in Modern Warfare 2. I thought it was really cool because I love third person shooters. That was like the time, I think, right after I played Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter. So I was really into third person shooters. And it looked really cool. I mean, there was a lot of corner glitching because your screen was so wide you could see around corners and shit. But that was a game mode, but nobody really played it, and so it hasn't been in a Call of Duty since, which is upsetting. But that's just a problem. I mean, all these extra game modes are just so easy to throw away because so few people play them. Honestly, there's no reason to even try that unless you really push one of these new game modes and replace one of your older modes with it. That's the only way that it could possibly sustain a large enough portion of the player base. And probably the most recent applicable game to this problem is Star Wars Battlefront. There's just so many infantry-centric game modes in that game that are too similar. So at least on PC, it's really hard to find a server in those game modes, like the one where you're capturing those freaking gonk droids around the map, and that one that's basically just capture the flag. It doesn't help that there's such a bad grenade spam problem in the game that really discourages infantry-centric combat because all you're going to be doing is constantly blowing up. But it's just, there's a lot of games now that have this problem. You don't need a lot of game modes to entertain your fan base. If your core game modes are so good, like Conquest and Rush and Battlefield, you don't really need other game modes. I mean, I think because Battlefield 4 had so many extra modes that Obliteration, which is actually a great game mode, practically got thrown out of the window because I loved playing Obliteration. It was a lot of fun, but it just died because it was an extra mode that was thrown in with all of these other superfluous modes. And I think honestly, if you as game developers are trying to spice up your games with new modes, you need to at least remove some newer ones. So those are just my thoughts on game modes, and hopefully Battlefield 5 does not suffer from game mode bloating, but only time will tell. So anyway, if you guys agree with me or not, just say so down in the comments what your opinion is on this matter. And if you guys like this, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. And until next time, this is Yummy. Goodbye and good hunting.